guys, this is Tarot with Kittens, Weights, and Tarot, and today's video is at subscriber request. I had posted on my Instagram stories some candles that I was making, these two candles specifically, and I was showing the steps that I was doing, and I was like, yeah, this is my, I was so happy with the candles that I made, and I was so happy how they turned out. And so many people were asking questions like, how did you get the candles not to do that tunnel effect, around the wick in the middle? How is it so straight across? Why are you using a crock pot? And questions like that. So I said, why don't I make a video? And a lot of people were like, yes, please show us a video on how you made your special magical candles, because of course I put a bunch of intention into these candles and they're meant for a very specific purpose. So yes, they do smell nice and they are pretty. But these particular candles I'm going to be using for very powerful healing spells. So let's get into it. So I had a pound of paraffin wax that I actually got at the Goodwill. And I was like, oh wow, that's cool. So I started looking up stuff about paraffin wax, and I learned that if I mixed it with a pound, 1 part to 1 part, so my 1 pound of paraffin wax with 1 pound of beeswax, which I already had laying around because I make my salves for my Etsy shop and my website, that it would stabilize the paraffin, because paraffin wax can be very soft and it is prone to that tunneling effect around the wick in the middle. I also had learned a little trick by going through the YouTubes that I could use a crock pot. So this isn't a crock pot that will ever have food in it that we are going to eat from. This is going to be specifically for candle making. And actually, now that I know that I can use this, I'm going to use this for my salves instead of doing the double boiler method. So this keeps things from burning just like the double boiler would, so that everything melts evenly and not too high of a temperature. So I went over to my local Goodwill and I was able to get this crock pot for $15. So I would suggest, instead of going out and buying tons, because I'm a pretty thrifty person. So I already had obviously this beeswax on hand. I got this crock pot for $15 at the Goodwill, $14.99 to be exact. But then I went over to Hobby Lobby and they had a sale on their candle stuff. So I spent, what was it, like $18 total on candle supplies, which was this giant, like 4-cup measuring cup. I got soy candle wicks, and I have the waxed candle wicks that I got at Hobby Lobby as well. Through the YouTube videos I was watching, they was saying, pre-waxed is best because it's easier for them to kind of stand up on their own, but I'll get into all the nitty gritty. And then also at Hobby Lobby, I got these 2 jars. They're roughly about 20 ounces each. And 1 pound of wax fills roughly 20 ounces. So when I took my 1 pound of paraffin wax and my 1 pound of beeswax, which is over here, that's 2 pounds. So it makes roughly 40 ounces. So then you can kind of figure out, what kind of candles you guys want to do, like a bunch of little candles, you want to do bigger candles. It's totally up to you. And then other things I had laying around, I had some other jars. I was going to use these other jars, but I decided to go with these. And you want to find jars with lids if you are planning on scenting your candles, which I did. I mean, I already have, I put rose petals in here, so it already slightly has that rose smell to it. But I decided to buy the little, also the little thing at Hobby Lobby. It was like 1 ounce of like rose fragrance. You are to add like a half an ounce of fragrance per 1 pound of wax. So like I said, I did 2 pounds of wax. So it was easy for me to just empty the whole 1 ounce like bottle into the wax. And then other things that I have, my rose petals because, you know, these are very magical to me. And of course, I wasn't going to make candles without my rose petals. So I had a bunch of dried petals already. So those are there. And of course, make sure that you guys practice heat safety so you guys don't burn yourselves. I know that this is a crock pot, but the crock pot can get kind of hot too. So make sure you have some pot holders. When I was like pouring the wax from here into here, which by the way, makes a mess if you don't pour it quickly. Like otherwise, you know, because it doesn't have like really a spout here, it just kind of goes bleh. So I put a bunch of like, you know, like junk mail, like the, you know, the papers that you guys get in like the junk mail. I just kind of put that around so I didn't get wax all over my countertops and the floor. So just FYI. Okay, so let's get into making some candles. Other things you're going to need a candy thermometer, because it's very important the temperature of the wax if you're going to use fragrance. If the temperature of the wax is too high, it will immediately burn off the fragrance and then you won't have any more fragrance. Like it'll just be gone. So you have to make sure that you're at a low enough temperature so that when you add the fragrance, it still smells like the way you want it to smell and you're not like wasting the $2 or $3 it costs to buy that fragrance. You want something to kind of stir around your wax. I mean, we're in an Asian household. I'm Filipina, you know, so I have chopsticks. So I just use like my chopstick to, you know, do that. And I will get into how I helped the wick stand up straight so it doesn't get all like wobbly and like bendy when you pour in the wax, using my other chopsticks and twist ties. So I'm going to show you guys that too. I have my little handy dandy book here of like my basically like my witchy recipes and things like that. So I have like my how to make candles section of my little book here. So I don't know if you guys want to like pause the video, you can kind of look at that, but I'm basically going to go step by step with you guys how I made these candles. So I guess I can just leave these here. What I did with the crock pot is I plugged the crock pot in next to my stove because there's a plug like right next to my stove, and I placed this on the stove. I just figured, I don't know, like the stoves are meant to get hot, so you know, I just put this on top, and then I put this on the high setting. So I turned this little knob until it was on high. Okay. I then took my block of paraffin wax. Luckily, it was the kind where you can break it into 3 large pieces, but I ended up also taking a knife that we're never really going to use for food, like one of the big chopping knives, and I just cut it into chunks that were about the size of like, I don't know, like $2 or $3 half dollars. So like big, you know, just chunks kind of like that. I put them all in the crock pot along with my beeswax here. And then it took about an hour for all of it to get fully melted. And I did leave the lid on. So I had it on high. I put the lid on. I just let it do its thing. As soon as I started seeing it get more melty, I'd do a little stir. It would get more melty, a little more stir, a little more melty, a little more stir. And then when I saw that it was almost completely melted, I started preparing my canister or my container or whatever the heck you want to put your candles in. So you want to make sure that the paraffin wax that you use is made for jar candles. Okay, there is a difference between the wax. So make sure that on the packaging it says paraffin wax for jars. So making sure that you're making jar candles. Okay, so I had my little dealy bob here, and then I took out my little, let's grab this one. Okay, this one's kind of bent because I originally was going to use this to make candles too, but I ended up just making these 2 candles. So this one was like already ready to go and I had to disassemble it. So that's why it's already like that. They didn't come like that, by the way, and they don't. So, so then I took the bottom of this, the bottom of the wick, I dipped it into the wax and I plopped it at the bottom of the jar. Okay, and then I took my chopstick and I gently tapped it down. Okay, and then I waited like a minute so it would solidify, and then basically when you pulled on it, it wasn't going anywhere. Okay, so that way you're like, okay, yes, it's not moving, because some people have trouble with stuff moving around when they pour in the wax, and you don't want that to happen with your wick. You don't want it to get all like droopy and woo, you know, because this is made of wax and you're pouring hot wax in, you know, things get a little droopy. You don't want that to happen. Okay, and then I took my chopsticks here, and it's actually even better when you use the chopsticks, the free chopsticks they give you at like the Chinese restaurant, because they're more square. So they sit a little flatter against each other. So I just found those to be easier to use. But you know, these are my chopsticks from home. So I put a little twist tie, and then I put, and let's see. So imagine this is like, you know, stuck down here. I went like this. Okay, which is why it's bent there, because I originally had it clipped there. And then I took my other twist tie and I twist tied this end, and I made sure that now the chopsticks were nice and tight. And then since this is basically, it was adhered to the bottom, you can then take this part and you can pull it up a little bit so that this is now taut. Okay, and then by this time your wax should be fully melted. So let me put this off to the side. So now you have wax that's pretty much almost melted. I started getting the, I wanted to use my rose fragrance. So I put that fragrance off to the side. I took out my candy thermometer and I wanted to check like, what's the temperature of the wax? So I put it in and the wax was at 170 degrees. That's too hot for fragrance. You want fragrance to be added when the wax is between 130 to 140 degrees Fahrenheit. So in order to cool the wax down, but not, you know, not cool it down too much, I ended up taking my pot holders here and I ended up pulling out this entire thing. And I have tile countertops, which can, you know, you could put hot stuff on my countertops. So I just took this out and I just placed it on my countertop. And I walked away. I don't know. I think I like used the restroom, like watched a YouTube video, like a 5-minute YouTube video. And when I came back, the temperature was already dropping. It took roughly 10 minutes, maybe 10-15 minutes for the temperature to drop from 170 down to, it was like 140, it was like 135, 140. So, which was perfect. So, you know, I obviously I had like a bunch of wax on here, so I made sure the wax was still warm, and I kind of used my fingers. You know, you're gonna get a little dirty, so I used my fingers to like get some of the wax off and pour it back in there, because you don't want to waste any of your wax, by the way. Okay, so then I put that off to the side, and when I poured the fragrance in, it looked like there was chunks in there. Basically, it just needs to kind of melt with the wax, so I just kind of stirred it more until it all had like mixed together, and I was like, okay, great. So then I put this back on here and I turned it on warm. Of course, if you have a crock pot that just has high and low, put it on low now, okay, because it's already melted. But I happen to have a warm setting, so it's high, low, and warm is lower than low. So you don't want this to continue cooking. You just want it to stay warm while you're doing the thing. So so then I took this and I poured half of it into this measuring cup, and then I took my jar. Ooh. I took my jar and I only poured it halfway. Okay, the reason you pour it halfway is so that you don't get that tunneling effect. Because as you know, when things cool, it takes the center of whatever it is the longest to cool. You know, if everything is surrounding it is hot, just like when you stick stuff in the microwave, it's the center of the food that you're trying to prepare that is the last to warm up, you know, so the center is the last to warm up, and the center is also the last to cool down when something is hot. Hence why we're only putting in half. So I only filled the 2 canisters here halfway. I decided to wait 30 minutes for it to solidify. I mean, not totally solid. It was like solid enough. So again, I went off, did something. I don't know. I think I like decided to go prune my rose bushes or something out front, you know, go occupy my time for 30 minutes. Came back. Then I came back to the measuring cup, and it had like a film of wax on it because you had just used it to pour wax. And again, I don't want to waste any wax. So what I did was I took my measuring cup, I put it in the microwave for 30 seconds. It started to get a little melty, you know, the residual wax that was in there. I put it in for 30 more seconds, you know, so you want to put it in the microwave for 30 seconds at a time until all the wax is re-melted that kind of stuck to the measuring cup when you were pouring it in the jars. Then I added the last half of the wax that was in here to this, added it into my canisters. Bam, looked good. I started taking my my rose petals and my rose leaves, and since it was like starting to solidify, I just started jamming them in, you know, just like with my finger and with the chopstick. I was like kind of putting them, you know, because the wax was starting to harden, and you can kind of place your roses kind of where you want, or your flowers, or whatever you're doing. And then as the top started to solidify, that's when I like put these, I pressed these roses into the top like that. So you can kind of see that there's roses throughout, and you can kind of see sort of the line from when I poured the wax and then I poured the last half of the wax. But you can't really see it too well, which is a good thing. I don't really want it to look separated. So then I just let I literally let my candles chill on my dining table where the kitties couldn't do any damage to my candles. They still had the chopsticks on them, so it was still holding up the wick because you know, it takes a while for it to cool. Like 5 hours later, they were still a little warm to the touch. Not hot, but like a little warm, you know, so you know that it takes a while for the candles to fully cool. Basically, you just have to leave them till like overnight. And let's see, what else? Making sure I'm not leaving anything out for you guys. Once I felt that they were pretty solid, I mean, they didn't really have much warmth to them left. That's when I took the chopsticks off. You know, I was very ginger, like you don't want to just like rip things off, but I like slowly, I'll show you on this one over here. Like, here we go. We have my little canister. Like I slowly like just, you know, try to undo it. I like held it down with my fingers, and I was like, okay. I felt like I was performing like heart surgery or something, and I was like, okay, now I'm gonna untwist this side. And I had accidentally gotten a little bit of wax on my chopsticks, so the chopsticks were a little stuck together. So I had to like gingerly separate them. I was kind of like, and I like separated them, and I was like, ha 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 ha, you know. And then I just took some sharp sewing scissors, and I snipped the wick about a half an inch to a quarter of an inch. Any longer, and it's gonna burn out. And you know, any shorter, and you're not really gonna get a flame either. So you want to make sure that like this thing doesn't light itself on fire. So about a half an inch to a quarter of an inch is how long you want to have your wicks for fire safety. And always remember not to leave a flame burning unattended, people. Okay, so I think that's basically it. And then for the magical part of that is I was placing my intentions the entire time of what I was going to be doing with these candles, you know, and I'm going to be using them for some very powerful energy healing sessions that I will be doing, especially for a good friend of mine and her 2 kids. I'm going to be doing a big healing session, which is what one of these candles is going to be for. I will be able to reuse them, obviously, because they are large candles. So I think just to recap that this 2 pounds of wax makes roughly 40 ounces of candle. And if you want to add fragrance, you're going to add 1 ounce of fragrance for that 2 pounds of wax. And if you're going to be using paraffin, you want to mix in maybe some beeswax just to make it more stable. Make sure you have some chopsticks on hand, or sticks, or whatever the heck you want it, to make sure that your wick doesn't fall over when you're pouring the wax in. And yeah, I think that's about it. And then, you know, when I had that leftover film of wax in the measuring cup, I just kept popping it back into the microwave 30 seconds at a time, you know, because I don't want to burn the wax that's in there, make things too hot. Used a pot holder to hold the glass, you know, measuring cup, of course. Fire safety, people. And then I just kept like pouring like the leftovers. Like I just tried to get the last of the wax. I didn't want to waste anything, and just kept pouring it into here until there was like no more. It was pretty easy cleanup. Like if you use some paper towels, because while this is still warm, it's pretty easy to like wipe it out and then afterwards just clean it, because you'll get most of the wax out. And this, while this is still warm, not hot, but still warm because you don't want to burn yourself, it's just easy to take a paper towel, wipe out most of the wax, and then, you know, just throw it in the dishwasher or hand wash it or whatever the heck you want to do. All right, so that's it. That's how I made my magical candles. I hope that you found this video helpful. You know, how I used a crock pot, and how I used some chopsticks, and how I used my roses, and, you know, all of that. So I look forward to seeing videos of maybe like candles you created, or if you want to post them on the Insta, my Instagram handle is @kittenswaitsandtarot. You know, so just tag me so that I can see the candles that you guys make, or maybe I'll see them in your Instagram stories, or you can post them on Facebook. And I do have a Facebook page, Kittens, Waits, and Tarot. Basically, it's all Kittens, Waits, and Tarot. So yeah, that's it for me, spiritual homies. Let me know if you have any comments or questions. Place that in the comment section down below. I'd be more than happy to answer your questions, or, you know, respond to your comments. And if you dug this video and you want to see me do more like DIY type stuff, just give me a thumbs up, and don't forget to click subscribe, and don't forget to click that ding 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 notification bell for more videos just like this. And yeah, if you want to catch a reading for me, because, you know, I do a lot of those too, head over to www.kittenswaitsandtarot.com, where you can also pre-order my oracle deck that I've created, the Wally's World Oracle. It's a community-based deck. And join that KWT tribe over at patreon.com/kittenswaitsandtarot. My peeps over there help support what I do, so that I could do more for you guys, and they get a lot of freebies. There's like weekly readings, there's monthly crystal grids, monthly live chats, mediumship live chats, meditation live chats, healing live chats. There's a lot that's going on over there, so definitely join the tribe. All right, and yeah, just don't forget, you know, make sure you get some canisters with lids if you're doing fragrance, so that the fragrance doesn't just evaporate into the air, so you can keep that rosy scent. Let me have a little rosy scent before we go. Let me smell. Oh yeah. That smells good, people. All right, so peace, love, and chicken grease. Peace out.